peace, I tell them good vibes only.
How you guys doing today? My name is Jessica Johnson from Western Michigan. I'm glad to see you guys here. We're going to be talking about something in particular. We're going to be talking about the fifth dimension. Now, some of you may not understand how the dimensions work and everything else, but look at it as like different layers of an onion. And there's different aspects, there's different themes, there's also different lessons that spirits had learned through their time of evolution. It's not just the fact of the evolution and the density aspect, such as our physical body, that comes with it, but also there's a conscious level because the universe itself is conscious. So basically we go through every aspect of each of these dimensions to be able to evolve as spirits. And it goes up to 12 dimensions, but the thing is we're going to be covering 1 through 9. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the fifth dimension, which is something that I'm sure that a lot of you may not understand, but I like to break things down so that way we can so that way you can be able to better understand how it all works. So if you've watched my videos on Facebook and Facebook Lives, you'll know that every matter and every statement, thought, experience, or even emotion has a vibrational frequency, because we are vibration, we are frequency. And just because of the fact that it has condensed matter in the aspect of what creates our physical body and everything else, it's still frequency and vibration. This vibration is definitely measurable, and each dimension basically has a level of vibration which is kind of like a set of lessons. The soul needs to learn these lessons before it can even further evolve, and it could take thousands of years for us to be able to evolve, to be able to get to that next level. Think of it as going to school, and you're going through different grades, such as kindergarten, first grade, second, third grade, you get the idea. But it's the same thing when it comes to dimensions, consciousness, dimensional aspects, because we're graduating at each level after we have learned all there is to learn within that particular dimension. You see, a soul chooses to live in a certain dimension and to learn these lessons. It's all about experience and what we learn from that. So since you have learned about these lessons, we have or will learn as souls, what about the fifth dimension? What is it like, and how do we even get there? What are the 5 statements within those 5 dimensions? Well, I'm glad you may be pondering those questions in your mind and maybe swimming about. But as I hope that this lecture and all others that I have done talking about dimensions, when it came to me talking about 1 through 4, that you have more of an understanding and see how they all interconnect with one another and how we as souls connect with each other. So in the fifth dimension, manifestation through thoughts becomes like a reality. Like when you imagine something or you want something, it comes with ease. With us being a third dimensional species, if we have to work for it, or it takes a minute for it to manifest within our reality. But in the fifth dimension, you think it comes. Just as simple as that. See, and emotions are also present in the fifth dimension, but you no longer allow them to basically dominate you. In the third dimension, our emotions have a tendency of dominating us, and we wind up reacting before, and then think about it later. We all can identify with that, right? But with the fifth dimension, we don't allow those emotions to take the front seat in our reality and in our life. you wind up possessing like a sort of mastery over yourself. And the frequency of the fifth dimension are higher than those of the physical dense world of Earth. And factually, they can basically vibrate at the speeds that are faster than the speed of light. That's why when you want to have something manifest in your reality, you just think it and it comes, because it happens at a faster rate than it does here on Earth, being in the third dimension or even the third density. So this basically makes that manifestation and that creation by thought form possible instantaneously. And the heart is basically in charge in this dimension. Unconditional love is basically the theme. Just like I had spoke about, each dimension has lessons and themes that us as souls have to basically learn. And with this, it's about unconditional love. And you're going to find out that unconditional love is maybe not what you exactly think it is. But we'll get into that as we go along with this lecture. See, the higher self, which is your soul, is matched with the heart. So love basically prevails because our actions are made up from the heart and no longer in the head. We don't think about these things, we just do them. So we can't just sit there and ponder and think, well, should I do this? Should I do it? Not do it? We react. So, and we follow our heart when we do that. So in the fifth dimension, it's certainly basically a term of often heard of basically the spiritual new age circles. And you'll meet a lot of people even on this planet who have a fifth dimensional consciousness, and they understand these things without even thinking about it. Or some people may have a fourth dimensional consciousness where, you know, it's time and space, and that time doesn't exist to them. You know, so basically we have definitely a variety of different people who are thinking at different levels of consciousness while living on this planet. So yet one may ask, what does that really mean? Is there basically where do spiritual guides come from? Well, there is one thing that you must understand about the fifth dimension. That is that this dimension is a level of consciousness after self-realization that had occurred. So basically the fifth dimension simply feels like a plane, a vast plane at that, and it stretches all around you. It just engulfs you. So self-realization is basically a doorway into the fifth dimensional plane of consciousness. And the movement into the fifth dimension is basically another reason why self-realization is so important. The doorway in which you seek that leads to this plane is consciousness itself. It's having an open heart, a complete open heart. And this is the door that leads to the fifth dimension. It's through the heart. I'm sure you probably had heard that basically the heart can be like a portal itself, where we could transport ourselves through different dimensions through our heart, because the heart is definitely a doorway to a lot of higher dimensions, fifth on up. And you have to go through that doorway and able to reach those, and to be able to climb even higher in consciousness. So what exactly is self-realization? Is it realizing who you are, what you've done? Well, self-realization is when a permanent opening of the heart forms. And that during self-realization, that I thought winds up dying out. It's no longer I. It's the opening on the right side of the chest form. It's more of we as a whole, a greater whole. So moving into the fifth dimension occurs sometime after that self-realization. The heart must be open before you can move to that fifth dimension. And the earth and all its beings and any type of entities, no matter where they come from, and even ones that are living on this planet, are shifting into a whole new level of reality, of which consciousness of love, joy, peace, freedom, compassion, and spiritual wisdom prevails. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, in this world, really? Yes. And I see it all the time with people that I meet. You can tell right off the bat that they are thinking within a fifth dimensional consciousness mind, because to them, they love everybody no matter who they are and where they're at, and they experience joy no matter the situation that presents in their life. Whether it be a hard situation, they always find something to be happy about, and they look at things in a different perspective, and they have more of freedom, because they don't have these things of the past or anything that hold them down. And that to anyone is freedom in itself, to not lug around all these baggage of the past or anything like that. And they have so much compassion and love. And we love these people. We look at them like, wow, you're just from a different world, because they're thinking in a different frame of mind, in a different consciousness. And it doesn't matter if they're in this planet or even in a different planet for that matter. If they have that compassion and they have that open heart, and they're going to be speaking from a higher dimensional consciousness. So this, my friends, is called the fifth dimension. That is what the fifth dimension is all about. It's all in here, the heart. So what are some examples of life characteristics of the fifth dimension? Well, people that exist in the fifth dimension plane, they live in peace and harmony, and that they're experiencing oneness with all of life, that they don't look at themselves as separate from anything else. They don't look at them as a separate entity of them and animals, or them and plants, or them and this and that. They see as we're all one. We're all a part of everything. I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie Avatar, but it basically shows us that these creatures from this other planet, that were the tall blue beings, they connected with everything that was around them. The animals, the big sacred tree, everything they connected to. And that's what the fifth dimension, that's what they're teaching us, is what people as well as entities, no matter where they come from, they connect with everything around them, that nothing is separate from themselves. They're all as one, and they fully respect all people, and they respect the planet. They take the whole job of being a good steward, seriously, and because they feel that if an animal is hurt, they're hurt, and if their planet is hurt, they're hurt. They feel that everything is as one, and they are all one with it. So equality, injustice, and respect for all beings within that planet, that it basically exists within the fifth dimensional plane. They don't believe in inequality. They don't believe just because you're a female or you're this or that you're separate from them. They have respect for you because they feel that everything and everyone is as one, because we are. If you look in the different lessons within different dimensions, dimensional consciousness, they tell you, they show you that we are as one, that we're not separate from anything that's around us. And that's something that humans within the third dimension have a hard time understanding, that they're not separate from anyone else, and they're not separate from the things around them, that we are all one. So basically, also hunger, poverty, and any type of crime does not exist within the fifth dimensional plane, because the thing is that it's all within, it's heart driven. Remember, that's the theme. It's unconditional love. So why commit a crime if you have that unconditional love? You wouldn't, right? So, and they believe in taking care of one another. They believe that if someone is starving, so are they. So they need to take care of that person and make sure that they don't starve anymore. And that's basically the lessons that we need to learn in this planet. But the fifth dimensional consciousness is one of my favorites, because of the simple fact that it's the lessons that we need to learn within ourselves, is that we are all in one, and that we are no different from one another, and that we need to help one another out that if you see somebody who is down on their luck, is to try to figure out what the problem is and see if there's anything as a community to come together and fix and to help one another. So basically, I could go on and on and on, just as I just did. But because this has been always one of my favorite planes to astral travel to, and I could not tell you, I could not even possibly describe or find the perfect adjective to tell you how beautiful it is and how much love you feel when you go into this plane. And that's why I love astral traveling to that plane, because of the fact that to me it's almost like being home. It's a place that I want to be and where I want to escape to, rather than to be in this reality. But we can't all do that. We have to live the experience that we're in, right? So you have to understand that living in the third dimensional reality, one would think that what I'm saying is completely delusional. You're probably thinking that I need to order that straitjacket from Amazon. It's not. It's not delusional. Any type of teaching that you get into in quantum physics, they will tell you when they go through different dimensional consciousness that basically what I'm saying, it correlates with what everyone else is saying when they describe the fifth dimension. So that it's quite all right that you think that I'm delusional. It's, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but just come at this with an open mind, and you never know. You might learn something, or you might think of something that you have never thought before. And that's why I love doing what I do and why I like teaching, because it's bringing something that you probably didn't know before and learning it now. So because one has to actually experience the presence of the fifth dimension. It's that me just telling you what it's about, that you're going to know what it's all about. It's something that you have to experience. And sometimes we wind up experiencing that from people that we meet in our path that have that fifth dimensional consciousness, and to be able to experience how they are, and you're just like, wow, that person is just such an awesome person. Or even for those that like to astral travel, it's one of those things that you have to experience and to enjoy and allow it to immerse you, to be able to understand what it's all about. So basically, fifth dimensional entities, or even to, basically visit these planes to fully understand what it's like. But for now, we'll just close your eyes and feel the information that I'm telling you and ask, does this resonate with you? Okay? Does this resonate with you? Your soul will tell you if it resonates with you. You'll feel that vibration within you that's saying, yeah, she's right. So I don't ask anyone to take what I say verbatim. I tell them to close their eyes and feel how it resonates with you, because your body, yourself, your inner self is going to tell you if that person is being truthful or they're just trying to feed you a load of leaves, okay? So just close your eyes and be open-minded to that information and to see how it feels within you. So those that have basically meditated and raised their vibrations, and those that have astral traveled, will absolutely agree upon these three examples that I gave when I was talking about life within the fifth dimension. And matter of fact, I know that many would happily add their own perspectives when describing the fifth dimension, because each experience is unique and different. So all life upon the fifth dimension lives in the unity of consciousness and of the spirit, but there is still an experience of I as an individual. It's, there still is individuality within the group of the fifth dimension, So linear time and space does not bind consciousness here, okay? There is no illusions, there's no separation or limitations that we wind up experiencing here on the third dimension. So instead, there is a constant experience of oneness for all and oneness of all. And while still practicing individuality. So basically, in order to enter into the fifth dimension and to be able to stay there, all mental and emotional baggage must be left at the door. So if you still are ticked off at your parents for what they had did when you were younger, that you have to heal from that and be able to release that and move on before you can enter into the fifth dimension. So there's no fear, there's no suffering, there's no anger, there's no hostility, there's no guilt or sense of separation that exists in the fifth dimension. So that's why it's important for us to be able to heal from the experiences that we have dealt with here on this planet and within the third dimensional experience. We have to heal from those. So no more being mad at mom and dad for what they did when you were younger. That's why it's important to heal from those things and to be able to release it so that way you can move forward. So, because those type of things are going to be the ones that are going to hold you back. So it's basically having master over thought. That's the prereq for the fifth dimension, is having mastery over your own thoughts. It's not thinking all the time and being pessimist about certain things in your life. That it's having master over those, knowing that you can heal from those, and that recognizing that those are the things that are going to hold you back from the experiences that you want to experience, and being able to release those things and being able to move forward. So all actions on this plane are basically based upon love, because fear cannot survive in higher vibrations of the fifth dimension. Have you ever wondered all the times that people struggle to try to figure out how to pay this bill or how to feed their family and all this other stuff? That's to keep your vibrations low. That's why the powers to be that dictate our government or this and that and the other, they try to keep our vibrations low by making us feel that we have to constantly survive. But the thing is that releasing that fear is that's what freedom is all about, is releasing that fear, releasing that anger, all that baggage and everything else, because this dimension is all based on love and unconditional. It's within the heart. And if we were to experience any type of fear while we're in the fifth dimension, then our vibration will definitely drop, and so will our consciousness, and it would instantly be lowered to like a lower subplane of the fourth dimension. And that's exactly what happens. So on the fifth dimension, life is basically unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness and unconditional acceptance. It's basically recognizing the things as they are and being able to forgive, not forgiving for someone else's pleasure, but forgiving for yourself, and being able to accept that is what happened. There's nothing that you can do to go back and change it. It's not going to happen. And releasing that so that way, and just being able to move forward. That's what it's all about. So manifestation within the fifth dimension is instantaneous. As I said before, you think it happens just like that. So when you think about something, it becomes present right then and there, because everything travels in the vibration of faster than the speed of light. So when you think of something, it happens. Kind of like, you're the genie and you're the ones making your own wishes come true in your reality. So people generally wind up communicating through telepathic communication in this dimension. And they have the ability to wind up reading each other's thoughts and feelings with ease. So it's not about trying to guess what this person's intentions are, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. You instantaneous know. You have that shared consciousness. You're able to know what that person is feeling or thinking, or what their intentions are, and you're able to easily share that with one another. So the experience of time is basically radically different. Some would describe it as everything happening all at once, and there's no distinction between the past, present, or future. That time and linear time as we know it doesn't exist. It's all as one. Okay, so basically everything that happens is happening all at once, and many that are having these experiences or dreams, they feel like having these visits in your dream or in the fifth dimension, because sometimes when we're sleeping we don't know if we're astral traveling or not, and many people do, whether they realize that they do or not. If it becomes a conscious realization that and that's why sometimes when we dream, we have these, some people wind up having dreams where they're able to be able to know what happens in their life before it even occurs. It's because we're tapping into that fifth dimension in our dream state. So it becomes, people wind up experiencing that that there is no distinction between that past, present, or future. Many also are having experiences or dreams that feel like that they wind up visiting that fifth dimension, and they keep on moving us through these difficulties. That's something that arises as we travel through the fourth dimension and then into the fifth dimension. And I like to refer to the fourth dimension as like a bridge, as like that bridge before you get into the fifth dimension. So the fifth dimension is also, as I have stated many times throughout this video, that it is the realm of love and compassion. And it is here that we wind up truly seeing that we are not separate from anything else around us, that we are all as one, and that we are one being living in one universe created by the God, source, creator consciousness. Okay, so we wind up living in the fifth dimension, and compassion is basically a normal staple, and it's natural, it's spontaneous. That spirit within directs us to take the best possible action to help ourselves and our fellow aspects of God. And the fifth dimension is also about unity. It's completely different from conformity, and it involves mature spiritual beings co-creating together with respecting one another individually. So unfortunately, it does not appear to be current within our political systems today. It definitely does not reflect this type of consciousness. But in the fifth dimension, it does. It becomes a normal way of life, just as our normal way of life within the third dimension. It becomes theirs within the fifth in regards to how they are able to have this higher consciousness and have that respect for one another. So what are the five statements within the fifth dimension? Well, the statements of the fifth dimension are as follows: love, wisdom, will, evolution, and co-creation. So, and I'm going to be going through those into, specifically and more in depth, so that way you understand, because each dimension has specific laws and guidelines. As something that we wind up learning as we go in, and we wind up evolving as spirits. These three, basically are love, wisdom, and will. Now, these are basically the tools of the universe that winds up allowing us to understand the universe through different perspectives. You have to understand that the whole process is it's the statement of evolution and co-creation. And these five statements put together are the basis of the fifth dimension. You see, the fifth dimension is basically born from the same moment that the first dimension was born. The moment with the consciousness that began to know itself. And the first dimension was born from the same idea that consciousness has about itself. And the idea that has love that to be expressed, has wisdom to understand who it is and who it was and who it will be. Then it has the will to basically move and create also it has the idea of living this process within the 4 statements of evolution. Once you accomplish the evolution of every stage of the universe, you become a co-creator, and you are able to become not only a creation, but also a co-creator in itself. I look at it as we're all going through training to become gods and goddesses within ourselves. That's the whole process of the evolutionary cycle within consciousness as we step to each of these evolutionary levels. So within the 5th dimension, it's also one where the wise ones, those who have accomplished the experience of the 3rd dimension, they can watch the expression and they can watch the whole process of the 4th dimension and understand the whole purpose of it. That is why people say that those in the 5th dimension will be the masters, the guides. They're the people and the entities that are heading us towards our mission, leading us through our purpose in life. And there are those who speak into our ears and say what is good and what is bad, kind of like the devil and the angel on each side of you. Where to go, where not to go, what to do and what not to do. So people will hear it themselves within the 5th dimension are basically the ones who wind up channeling that information from the whole as the ones who have the whole picture. Have you ever been in a situation where you kind of have that gut feeling that it's not a right situation and everything, and you just feel that something had told you not to go there, not to open that door, not to walk through that building, or not to board that airplane, and you wind up listening to it, and then you find out what had happened. Either there was a raid in that building of a friend's house that you were about to go to, or rather you didn't board the plane because something told you not to, and then later you find out there was a massive catastrophic plane crash. These are the masters, the guides that wind up telling us what's best for us, and not to do this, not to do that, and everything else. So the 5th dimension is basically the dimension that is the core of the universe. And you have 4 dimensions that you can wind up seeing yourself. And they are the 1st dimension, the 5th dimension, and the 7th dimension, and the 9th dimension. Okay? These are the dimensions that you can basically see yourself. It's kind of like being able to have a review of what you have learned so far. So in case you forgot, they are the 1st dimension, the 5th dimension, the 7th dimension, and the 9th dimension are the dimensions to where you can wind up seeing yourself, having that review. And it's all the process of this is basically linked to the 4 statements of the 4th dimension. The 1st dimension is the expression, okay? And then like the 5th dimension is the experimentation. Then the 7th dimension, you look at it as the integration, and the 9th dimension as the transcendence. Now, if you've watched my video about the 4th dimension, I had talked about the 4 statements, which was expression, experimentation, integration, and transcendence, which is something that we see all the time in the third dimension. Everything winds up merging with one another. It's not like one grade is separate from the other. It's kind of like when you go to 2nd grade, you kind of review a little bit of what you have learned in the 1st grade before you go ahead into the lessons of the 2nd grade. So basically it all merges with one another and it all comes together. So basically when we go into the first dimension, we're learning to express ourselves. We're learning to find ourselves and everything else. When we go into the 5th dimension, we're experimenting. We're figuring out what works, what doesn't, and we're tinkering around with all our little toys and everything else. And then the 7th dimension, that we're integrating what we have tinkered around and found out what works and what hasn't. We're integrating all this into our reality. And then in the 9th dimension, we're realizing that everything that we have experienced and found out and everything was never really ours to begin with. And we wind up releasing that. We wind up letting it go. So moving forward, the fifth dimension is basically related to the third one because the fifth dimension is the one that helps us to understand the process. And we live in the third dimension and the fourth dimension. And that's why that the beings from the fifth dimension, they wind up guiding us through the third dimension. And as we live our lives and express our realities in the third dimension as human beings, as plants, or even animals, believe it or not, the third dimension is helping the entities from the fifth dimension to understand themselves through the experience that you're experiencing. So as well as your guides are helping you by telling you and warning you not to do this or that, you're also helping them to understand themselves through your experiences that you're experiencing in the third dimension, if that makes any sense to you. See, we used to believe that beings from the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension are people or entities that are more evolved than we are. And yet, it's not exactly like that. It's between those dimensions that we actually learn from each other. So, excuse me. My mouth gets dry, so it's not anything else. But so we do this experimentation in the third dimension, and it's the fifth dimension that helps us see the whole picture. When we're living our life and we're just, going with it and everything else, it's the fifth dimension that allows us to see why we did this. Why did we go to that specific school? Why did we live in a specific state? Why did we marry the specific person? And it winds up giving us a whole different perspective, why things happen when they happen. And a lot of people don't take that time to think about those things, but in the fifth dimension, you do. And yet we wind up experiencing, we wind up seeing that whole picture and why we did the things that we did and why things happened the way they did. And it helps us feel the emotions and within those type of expressions. So that is how we are, symbiotic beings, and that's why we're symbiotic beings, because all around the universe, dimensions are like organs of the body, okay? And we're organs of the body of the universe. And all of them has a purpose, just like our heart has a purpose, just like our kidneys have a purpose to filter out, everything. And just like our heart has a purpose to keep us alive and pumping the blood throughout our body. So basically we are basically those organs within the whole universe. And every one of us has a specific job of what we do. So every entity in the whole universe has a way to find their way into the fifth dimension within these five statements. And these five statements, they wind up, you wind up seeing these five statements come up all through the other dimensions. And you'll find that out as you wind up learning about the sixth dimension and on, that these statements are going to definitely come back and you're going to be like, wow, I never even thought of it that way. And trust me, when when you do, it's almost like your mind is just completely blown. You're just like, wow. It's that aha moment. You see, the first statement, let's go on with the first statement, the five statements. The first statement is, of course, love. And love means eternity love. It's not something that you feel for others, okay? And that's why I said that it's not unconditional love. It's not exactly how you would think it is, okay? So basically, love is not something that you feel for others, but love is basically the main vibration. Love is definitely a key to a lot of different things. And so it's basically that allows the entity to express itself. You being able to express yourself. And I'm not talking about having a guitar and being in the lawn of the girl that you like and singing a tune or so. No, it's truly expressing yourself from here. from your heart chakra. So you wind up feeling every emotion in just one spot and in one moment. It's just like it immerses you. It's all around you. It is you, and you feel it from here. Understand that emotions are just waves from that love, and that we can basically express love in many different levels of that vibration. So that is why we used to say the opposite of love is hate, right? So, but it's not like that at all. Hate is just a low vibration of love. If you don't just hate because you have nothing better else to do in your life and you just want to hate everybody. Hate is because you're not loved. If you really think about it and you listen to, people who are angry and everything else, if you listen to their life story, you'll find out that the reason why they feel that the way that they do, or they hate people, they say they hate people, or they hate this or hate that, is because they never really felt any love from it. So basically, hate is not because they just want to hate. Hate is because you were not being loved. So think about that. Whenever someone winds up expressing that they hate someone, what is the core and why they hate that person? Why are people at times hateful and going around hating life and everything in it? Is it because that they were not shown any type of love? Is it because that they did not feel any type of, they felt like they didn't exist with the people around them? That's basically, if you look at it, that is the core of what many people wind up dealing with in this reality. So the only way that you can understand every emotion, even the low vibrations or even the high ones, is basically through love. Love is the energy that creates every emotion. And when you connect yourself to the fifth dimension, you have to feel unconditional love. That unconditional love, to basically understand what love truly is. Unconditional just means that you are aware that you have created everything around you. Unconditional doesn't mean that because Uncle Jack had decided to rip you off and everything, that everything is all fine and dandy, that he didn't, and live life exist, like he didn't do it ever, and you go and trust him again and give him money or something, and he does it again and again and again. Unconditional love unconditional doesn't mean that. It just means that it's awareness. It's having awareness that you have created everything around you, and we're co-creators. We create everything in our reality, and it's not because something outside of us had put these things in our life. We have created these so we can learn from it, so we can understand it. And that's one thing that took me a long time to understand before my awakening, was that I created all this in my reality so I can learn it, and through these experiences, what did I learn from these experiences? And that's what it helped me. And once I understood that, I was just, again, like that aha moment, like, that's why this happened, or that's why I wanted to learn and I wanted to experience this. So love is just an expression that has created all this. And dimensions are simply different ways of consciousness where you observe one reality. You express it, you understand it, you wind up, seeing it for what it is. And that's why we don't go off to the fifth dimension until we wind up achieving those things. So if you don't feel the dimension, you don't feel coherence from the third dimension, or the unconditional love, it would be exceedingly difficult to be able to truly understand the fifth dimension if you don't have that coherence. In the fifth dimension, love is just one. It's not feeling it from separate chakras, okay? Um, it's understanding it. So you can't just hate or love. You just love everything as it is. Even the people that do the things that they do that you don't approve of. It's not that you hate that person. You don't agree with what they did, but you still love them. I can tell you a personal story. I have parents that I wasn't exactly happy with what they have done in their life and how they had raised us and us kids and everything. And they were very narcissistic. And they never took any responsibility for the things that they did or anything like that. It was all about them and how they felt. And they really didn't care, if they hurt anyone else. It was just all about them. Now, it took me a long time and a lot of healing because it was just like I had so much baggage because of that I was dragging throughout my life that it was holding me back. And it wasn't until my awakening and going through the dark night experiences that I had to heal from that I had to basically dig deep down inside and to recognize it for what it is and to be able to release that so I could move forward. And trust me, it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, because it's not. Any type of dark night journey, and many of us go through multiple ones throughout our lifetime. Each time that we step up on those vibrations, we go through a dark night experience because we're digging deep in and we're pushing everything, into the surface, so that way we can release it. And it's not always pleasant. So I may not be happy with my parents' choices and what they have done, but I love them. I know that they're not going to change as individuals because they have to choose that for themselves. Okay? They could, but they have to choose that for themselves. And so therefore, I have to accept it to where it is, and that I have to release that pain and everything that I have felt, and so that way I can move forward. So the thing is that we have to love everything for what it is. It doesn't mean to trust mom and dad again, knowing that they're going to hurt you. It's just loving them as the parents who had raised you, kept you alive, and forgiving them, not for them, but for you, and being able to release that. And I know that a lot of people go through different aspects through their upbringing and a lot of grievances with parents and everything else. But it's just a matter of perspective and how you think about it, and how it relates to you and how you can move forward. That's why in the fifth dimension that judgment doesn't exist. It's not about judging, as in that's good or bad. It's getting into the whole polarity of things. It's just loving them for who they are, where they are, and forgiving them for where they are, and moving forward. So if you have any type of little bit of judgment towards someone or something, it would be really difficult for one to wind up seeing the fifth dimension. Judgment is when we wind up seeing the reality from your perspective. You cannot see a whole picture because you're not allowing somebody else to give you their perspective or what they feel. Everybody has their own truth. Everybody has their own truth. And when we just get narrow-minded and say, well, my truth is all that matters, then you're not going to see anything past that. You have to look at other perspectives, because maybe it's something that you didn't realize before, or something that they were feeling inside themselves, and they just react to those things differently. Another example is finding that that I have family members that were as well had grievances and abused when they were young. So it was kind of like this repeated pattern that just never could get broken. And it was me I felt that I had to break that and to not continue that forward. But you would never know that if you don't look at other people's perspectives and how they feel, because they can't heal themselves because they don't know what else to do with that other than to react emotionally. So when you start to look at other people's perspective and not just be focused on your perspective and that's all that matters, then you wind up having a whole different aspect of thinking, a whole different way, and not just judging that this person or that person, that I don't like this person because they're overweight, or I don't like this person. That's judging. Judging doesn't exist in the fifth dimension. It's loving everyone no matter who they are, where they are, and what they have done. Okay? So the fifth dimension allows you to basically see the whole picture in every time and every space. So you can basically understand the whole process, why things happen, why people are the way they are, and so on and so forth. You see the whole process, and you can wind up seeing that you have lived through everything, that you wind up achieving the second statement of the universe, and that's wisdom. So what exactly is wisdom to you? What is your perspective in wisdom? Is it knowing a lot of things? Is it being very good at being astute in books and everything else? What is wisdom to you? So to me, this is my perspective, and hear me out. Wisdom is not something that's related to knowledge. You are not wise because you basically know a lot of stuff, that you're really good in trivia, okay? It's that you're wise because you understand it, that it's vastly different from one another. Knowledge is definitely different from understanding. So understanding is when we wind up taking information from all over, then we put that information together to basically understand the whole process of the truth. It's not just knowing this aspect or that aspect, it's understanding it. So in the third dimension, knowledge is a good thing because because you have to follow, you have to understand, you have to study, you have to look at every book, you have to look at every aspect of the internet, and because it's good because it helps you to understand the reality. Because of the fact, look at it as the third dimension as being your training to learn how to understand. Okay? So, to understand reality, that you wind up understanding it and that you have corrected it. It's good to have knowledge in the third dimension. It's for us to basically learn to understand as a soul. It allows us to retrieve that knowledge, and then we learn how to understand it. So when you get to the fifth dimension, you wind up feeling the fifth dimension. It's not just traveling there. It's feeling. You feel it. You will figure out that knowledge doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter what stuff you know. That in the fifth dimension, it's wisdom is what matters. It's understanding it is what matters the most. It's when you feel the truth and you tell the truth. And that the truth is just one, but it splits in many different levels, and that is why there are so many different perspectives from one truth. Somebody may tell you a different perspective in their view of what the fifth dimension is. And you may have your own perspective in what the fifth dimension is. Just like I have my perspective of what the fifth dimension is. But if you really look at the different aspects of what each person's perspective is, that they wind up saying the same thing, just put differently. But that's how we wind up finding out what truth is looking at the different perspectives of what people have and being open-minded to receive those different perspectives, because everybody has their own truth. And then we wind up feeling that truth within us. That's what the whole aspect that I was talking about in resonating that information within you your body within you will wind up vibrating, and you will know that it's the truth because you feel it. It's not something of just knowing that's the truth. You feel it within you. So understand this. Wisdom allows you to have no doubt. Wisdom is one that doesn't exactly have certainty. Wisdom is when an entity allows itself to live like a child, being surprised about everything that it discovers. Every time when I wind up finding things out or putting things together and having this mind-blowing spiritual, perspective, I get excited. I get excited like a kid with a new toy, and I'm just like, wow, that's just amazing. And that's what it is. It's having that inner child and being surprised of what you discover, what you have experienced, what you have understood. And that becomes happiness within yourself. And it's because you feel that information, you understand that information. You're not thinking about that information. And that's why the second statement of wisdom winds up helping you to leave the judgment and to see that every possibility and see every perspective. Wise people don't say, this is the truth. What they actually say is, what is your perspective of that truth? Just like I asked you in the beginning, what is your perspective of wisdom? What is your perspective of what love is? They don't say this is what it is and this is something you must believe. What they say is, what is your perspective? What do you think about this? Wise people, they do what I view as Yoda speak, right? Because they want you to make that journey. They want you to make that discovery as each one of us had ourselves. It's not to tell you that this is the way it goes and this is how it is and this is what you must believe. They want you to develop your own perspective, your own discoveries. They want you to feel that within here. That's what's important. And teaching in the past, in other dimensions, were now never statements. They were taught that were taught by people. Third dimension reality values regurgitation of information. This is what, in third dimension, this is what the information is. I want you to memorize it and be able to recite it to me. That's what regurgitation of information is. In the third dimension, that's, if you look at the school systems, that's how it is. It's regurgitating information. They value, basically the value in the fifth dimension is basically critically thinking to where you wind up feeling it and you wind up understanding it. And another example is what wise people do. They would ask their students, what do you think about this? Whenever have you come back from visiting a dimensional plane, when I would astral travel, my guides would ask me, this is what they would ask me, what did I learn from that particular dimension? Anytime that I astral travel to a different dimension, or anytime that I look at certain situations in my own experience, they ask me, what did you learn from that? What did you take from that? What did you get from that? They want my perspective in how I had went through that journey, and what did I feel? What did I understand it? So they would never really tell me what to expect. They want me to basically discover on my own and develop my own perspectives on those experiences. That's what a wise person does. They don't say matter-of-factly, this is what it is, this is the truth, and this is what you have to believe. This is what you must believe. Schools, at least here in this country and in this dimensional reality, have taken away critical thinking. Makes you wonder why, right? It's turning our society into less wise entities, and instead they champion regurgitation of someone else's perspective. Now, this may be my perspective and what I observe. You may have one of your own, but it's with what I ask you. What is your perspective in what they are teaching our children in this dimensional reality? In your perspective, it could be, no, they don't have my son or daughter regurgitate information. They ask me what they ask my son and daughter what they think. And that's great. You may have a different perspective than I do. But the thing is that it's important for us to ask and be open-minded to what somebody else's perspective is on a particular subject matter, because you may learn something from their perspective that you didn't think about before. So wise beings in the fifth dimension, they always ask. They don't wind up leading. They don't lead people to a particular way or a particular belief system. They're not the ones that say that you have to go there, that you have to believe this, that you have to, this is how it is. They're the ones that ask, are you sure that you're where you're going is the right way? Are you sure that would be the right thing for you to do? They allow you that freedom of will to make your own decisions, but they just give you advice. It's your choice whether you want to follow it or not. That's the type of wisdom that I'm describing. Wisdom is allowing others to see the truth in their perspective with their own eyes and to feel it within their own soul. So now, this basically leads me to the third statement of the fifth dimension, which is will. You should have known that I was going to wind up wandering into that, right? So what does it mean to you to have will? What is it with you? What is your perspective of what will is? We understand that basically will is an act. It's to have the energy to go through the realities, to have the force and the strength to create that reality and to experience that reality without not wanting to give up. So in the fifth dimension, it is to work with that will. It's the one that understands the love and wisdom. They are the statements that wind up that helps you to understand and to feel the creation. It helps you to understand the whole picture. And the will is what gives it the energy that you can transform that whole picture. Will is the strength. It's the engine that allows the wisdom and the love to be expressed. Life in the third dimension, it's will that helps us to go through and to have the inner power to understand what we are capable of and that we are capable of everything. This is why in the fifth dimension that we all know that we are capable of anything. In the third dimension, we're limited by cultural thought, by emotional thought, by logical realities, and we are limited to this experimentation. In the fifth dimension, it's the ones that have the will. It's the ones that will tell you that they are capable of everything. So look at me in the eyes. Are you capable of anything? Do you really believe within your soul that you are capable of everything? It's a question you need to ask yourself. That is why when we wind up going through the fifth dimension, that we can see the fifth dimension, that we are able to see that we are capable of doing anything. In the process of love, wisdom, and will, it's also ruled by evolution. So what is evolution to you? Is it the fact that we change physically? Or is it more of a spiritual evolution? What does evolution mean to you? Evolution is basically it's the fourth statement to the fifth dimension. With evolution, people within the spiritual community, they understand that the process that we have held in the universe is evolution. There is evolution in what science states, and then there's evolution in what spirituality states. So when you put spiritual entities and spiritual thoughts with a biological way of living, you have evolution. In this third dimension reality, we wind up separating both of these. But the thing is that evolution is basically a path that spirits had took. They took this to better understand themselves. It's not something different. It's not something that we have to create to basically understand who we are. This is why in the fifth dimension that we can see evolution as an enchanted path towards ourselves, to be able to recognize what we are capable of. That's why anyone in the universe can't escape the process of evolution. It's one of the most important statements and the most important goal of the universe. The fact is, the universe doesn't care if you achieve a goal or not. The universe cares if you have learned things and that you have put things into action. That's what the universe cares about. So what about the fifth statement of the fifth dimension, which is co-creation? Are we co-creators? Do you believe that you're a co-creator? What is your perspective on that? Well, first, we must understand that we are creation, that we have been created by the mind of the first dimension, but we are living all this to evolve ourselves into being creators. Just like I had said earlier, we are gods and goddesses in training because we are all co-creators. When we wind up realizing that we are by ourselves, different minds of the first dimension, we can know that the universe is splitting into universes, and that many of us have the knowledge of this, and that we are getting different universes all around, like big beings who were created through many and thousands of universes. Parts of the universes are actually entities that realize that they were creators. So we are heading to a path in which we wind up experiencing to be gods and goddesses. That we have in the third dimensional consciousness been conditioned to wind up give our own power to something or someone who is deemed higher than ourselves. Thinking that we're not smart enough, or that we're not worthy enough, that we don't have enough power with ourselves to be such, which is all the result of conditioning. We create it all the time in our own reality without even realizing it. We have all seen that girl that says, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not skinny enough, and she winds up starving herself and dealing with different eating disorders because she doesn't feel that she's pretty enough. She's not like those supermodels that you see on Sports Illustrated or something. But the truth is, you are beautiful. You are smart. You need to believe that within yourself, just like you are a co-creator. In our next reality, it will become a part of our own awareness that we are all these things, and we'll have no doubt knowing that. In ancient realities, they didn't believe in gods, and some believed in cosmic beings that created us. They believed that we were all part of just one being, and that each of us were just preparing ourselves to wind up being gods and goddesses. This is why a lot of ancient temples are temples where people have come to become gods. In the fifth dimension, co-creation is to be a co-creator of reality. as much consciousness that you have, the more aware that you are creating that reality from your perspective. Think about that. That being a co-creator of reality, that you have the consciousness, that you become more aware, that you wind up creating reality in your own perspective. No matter good or bad, it doesn't matter. If you have the whole perspective of everything, that you were able to change that reality from your perspective, you become a creator. Co-creation is not to create something for me. Co-creation is just in the word. It creates with others, like one being. It's not, the way that we use the word co-creating is to relate to the law of attraction. When you want to attract something in life, I can create this. I can co-create this reality. I am a co-creator. And I have this new car because I thought about this car, I thought about this house, and now I have this house. But none of that is co-creation. It's just creation. It's not co-creation. Co-creation is when you create stuff to share with all people or with all entities, that you created all of it with them. So co-creation is not interested in matter. They're not interested in, they're only interested in experiences. So co-creation is entities that are not just doing stuff to have stuff. They're doing stuff to feel and to express and to share. That is why in the fifth dimension, it's where you can look from above with every process that you have lived. In the fourth dimension, you have the four statements that I had discussed before: expression, experimentation, integration, and transcendence. These four are the square in which the process of the universe is held. But if you go up and you build a pyramid, it's the fifth dimension, which is the top. The fifth dimension is what allows you to see what you're doing. This is basically, it circles around you. It's the one that shows you how you can understand everything. That is why the all-seeing eye on the top of the pyramid, we've all seen it. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati. The true meaning of that has been hijacked and, of course, reversed. Its meaning is because in the fifth dimension that you can wind up seeing and understanding the whole process as well as your whole life. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati. It has nothing to do with all that. Of course, most things that we try to understand had been hijacked and reversed. The top of the pyramid is the fifth dimension because we can see everything. We can feel everything. We can see why this happened or that happened. We can understand the whole process. There is a goal, a meaning, a purpose for everything that is happening. There is no good things or bad things that happen. It happens. To understand this process and what I mean in regards to the fifth dimension, we have to understand that there's no judgment. The best example that I would like to explain to you is a story in which everyone can basically connect to. It's how we're now living the result of the Second World War, which was the most horrible the most horrible thing that ever happened in our history, right? We experienced that within our history on this planet, in this dimension. Now we're integrating that history in the 21st century. Hitler in the third dimension was someone who did really horrible things to humanity. but it's not the same story in the fifth dimension. Allow me to explain. In the fifth dimension, we have guides, spiritual beings that knows the process in the third dimension. They see the whole picture, and what they saw was that we as humanity were in a very low vibration, and we had only 50 years to go up into the integration aspect and to basically change our whole consciousness of the whole planet. We had only 50 years, but we were so low in vibration and we were so slow doing this step-by-step process that it would basically take 200 years to understand this switch of consciousness, not 50. So we had a tiny little bit of time to understand the consciousness of the planet. So we needed something to make it much quicker, to jump it up another 150 years. So in the fifth dimension, some entities were said that they had to understand that the only way to make consciousness happen is if we wind up uniting humanity with love. And if we reunited humanity in freedom. So how exactly do we do that in a world that was just stuck in a certain way of thinking, in a certain way of acting? The only way that it can be to do that is by transferring that matter very quick. That is the only way that you can do it, that when everything is at a low frequency and that everything is and that is by basically crashing every reality and transforming it through a crisis. So this is why the spirits within the fifth dimension sent people to unite the world. So what happened next was when the World War ended, they started the process of unity, the process of the United Nations, the process of human rights, the UN, and the whole world started to free all the separations of the world. And the spread of information had also occurred sometime after that. And then freedom was valued. It was a lot of things that this world didn't have before that we do now. So here we are today, where it is another crisis, highlighting the very things that had been going on in darkness for us to wind up changing it for a greater good. So the question is, will we? Will we actually take what is going on today, what is happening now? Will we see it for what it is and change it? Change our whole world? Or will we do nothing? That's the question. We see all this that we have gained started from that moment. So in the fifth dimension, the goal and what had happened in World War II was accomplished. It was to unite the world with love and freedom. And that's exactly what happened. So they did just that. So the thing is that in the third dimension, we just see the process in a noticeably short way. That we only feel what makes us feel the process itself. And that the people who made that process, you cannot see the whole process. It is difficult for many people to understand that we are here now because of what happened there in that moment. So look at the current situations of what's happening in our world today. Look at the protests, everything that's happening, and see what we're supposed to learn and what we need to create to have a better world. That's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on why these things are happening and what we can do to change the world into a better place for all. So what we have to understand in the fifth dimension is that we don't have judgment in history. We don't judge things in history as good or bad, or this and that. In the fifth dimension, we understand that everything has a purpose, no matter what it is, and that everything that we are now is because of what we have done in history. Let me say that one more time. Everything that we are now is because of what we have done in history. The example I used with the Second World War, as you well know, we have many and plenty of examples, like Rome, like the fall of Rome, in Israel, the Middle East, Egypt, China, the United States, on and on and on and on. Look at the conflicts that we had and what has sprung from those conflicts. Are those countries a better place? Have they learned their lessons? Have they moved forward? Have they created something better? So many explanations that wind up showing us through history that what is happening now, whether it's good or whether it's bad, that things are not such a thing. That when you see it from the fifth dimension, the fifth dimension is unity and is the one eye that sees everything from above and winds up and understands the whole process. And that is why you go into the fifth dimension. You are not capable to blame anyone because you understand every person is the product of a process. A tiny product of a process that is basically held with whole spirits. So you can't just judge the matter. You must understand the purpose of the transformation. Every matter, statement, thought, experience, emotion has a vibrational frequency. This vibration is measurable, just like I said in the beginning. Every dimension has levels of vibration, which is a kind of set of lessons that we wind up learning. And that the soul needs to learn from these lessons before it can further evolve. It has to learn every aspect of that dimension. A soul may choose to live a certain dimension and learn these lessons. In the fifth dimension, manifestation through thought becomes possible. Emotions are still present, but you no longer let them dictate your reality. You possess a short mastery over yourself. The frequencies of the fifth dimension are higher than those of the physical, dense world of Earth. And you're probably saying, wow, she said the same thing in the beginning. It's because I want you to understand, now that I have explained it all, why I say this. They can vibrate at speeds faster than the speed of light. And this winds up making manifestation and creation by thoughts possible. That the heart is in charge, and the higher self, which is your soul, is matched with the heart. And that love prevails because our actions are made from the heart and no longer from the head. So if you look for the fifth dimension, look no further than the heart. Because it's your open heart where you're going to find it. And that is the reality of the fifth dimension. Thank you so much for watching my video. You guys are awesome. And I'll see you next time as I talk about the sixth dimension.